She's so perfect, our little miracle. I can't believe it. My daughter. Welcome to the world, my love.
The nurse placed her in his arms at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, and Stephen forgot how to breathe. She was wrapped in white cotton, still wrinkled from the world she had just left. Her tiny fist curled so tightly, it looked like she was already holding on to something she refused to let go. The delivery room smelled of antiseptic and effort. His wife Maya lay exhausted on the bed behind him, her chest rising and falling in shallow waves. But Stephen did not look at her. He could not look away from this child. This small, impossible, terrifying child who had just arrived and already owned everything inside him. He had prepared himself for this moment. He had watched the videos, read the books, asked his older brother what it felt like to become a father. His brother had said, "Oh, you won't understand until it happens." Stephen had nodded like he understood. He had understood nothing, because nothing, no book, no video, no borrowed wisdom had warned him that the moment his daughter opened her eyes and looked up at him, something in his chest would permanently rearrange itself. Like furniture that had been in the wrong place, his entire life had suddenly been moved to where it always belonged.
I was thinking about a name.
Oh, what is it?
Chisom. It means God follows me.
He named her Chisholm. God is with me. He chose that name 3 months before she arrived, standing in the kitchen on a Saturday afternoon while Maya sat at the table with her hands over her belly. He had said the name aloud, and it had landed in the room like a prayer. Maya had smiled. A full smile, the kind she gave when something surprised her with its beauty. They had held each other in that kitchen for a long time, longer than people hold each other unless they are trying to memorize the feeling. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing that needed to be said. Joy, when it is real, does not require narration. The night Chisholm was born, Stephen stepped outside the hospital and stood in the car park under a sky full of indifferent stars. Lagos hummed around him, generators, distant music, the low growl of the expressway that never fully slept. He pressed his back against the wall and let himself cry. Not from fear, not from exhaustion, from gratitude so overwhelming it had to leave his body somehow. He was 31 years old, recently promoted at his engineering firm, renting a 2-bedroom flat in Surulere that he had already decided to upgrade now that his family had grown. He had a plan. He had a daughter. He had everything. He made a vow that night. Not in a church, not with witnesses. Just a man and the sky and the weight of a new life, sleeping somewhere inside that building behind him. He said it quietly, the way men say the things they mean most deeply, almost under his breath. Deeply, almost under his breath, as if God might miss it unless it was whispered directly upward. I will protect her. I will work for her.
I will protect her. I
Kind
will
of
work
father
for her.
she never has to
I will be
recover
the
from.
best father for her.
He pressed his fist against his chest when he said it. The concrete wall was cool against his shoulders. The vow landed somewhere permanent. The weeks that followed were chaos dressed in beauty. Sleepless nights that somehow still felt like gifts. Chisholm's first cry from another room, pulling him upright before his brain was even awake. And Maya
okay.
moving
Daddy's
through
here
the
now.
flat in those early weeks like a woman navigating a dream, tender, exhausted, luminous. Stephen changed diapers at 3 a.m. and did not complain once. He brought Maya pepper soup from the woman 2 streets over because someone told him it helped with milk. He photographed Chisholm every single day of that first month, convinced that if he blinked too long, something irreplaceable would disappear. And in those early photographs, if you look closely enough, if you are the kind of person who pays attention to small details, there is something in Stephen's face that you do not see often in the world. It is not just happiness, it is the specific, dangerous joy of a man who believes, completely and without reservation, that he is exactly where he is supposed to be, that everything has arrived, that the story from
Lord.
here only gets better. He did not know then what you know now, that somewhere inside that beautiful life a lie was already living, already breathing, already growing alongside his daughter, waiting patiently for its moment to stand up and speak. By the time Chisholm turned
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to
3,
you.
Stephen had quietly become a different species of man. Not worse, not broken, just reshaped by fatherhood into something harder and more tender at the same time, the way wood becomes when it weathers long enough without splitting. He woke every morning at 5, not because the alarm demanded it, but because his body had rewired itself around the rhythm of providing. Shower, coffee,
Sleep well, love.
a quick check on Chisholm, who slept with her
Time to
mouth
get
open
ready.
and one arm flung
I'll
dramatically
be back
over
soon.
her head like she was surrendering to a dream. And then the 40-minute drive to work in traffic that would have destroyed a lesser man's spirit.
new school.
The school
Welcome
fees
to Great
started
Fountain
when
Academy. Here's
Chisholm
the
was
list of
4.
requirements.
Thank you.
Stephen
Welcome
had
to Great
chosen the
Fountain
school
Academy, a
himself.
place of beauty and learning. Our magnificent fountain symbolizes the flow of knowledge. Great Fountain Academy, where education and elegance meet.
Grace Fountain Academy in Gabagada. Pale blue uniforms, a compound with actual grass, teachers who remembered children's names. It cost more than he had initially planned. He did not tell Maya the full amount. He simply paid it, adjusted his budget, skipped the car upgrade he had been considering, and said nothing. That was the first of many quiet sacrifices, the kind that leave no receipt, no record, no witness except the man making them. He kept a small notebook in his desk drawer where he tracked expenses. Chisholm's name appeared on almost every
Hold on, we're
page.
going now!
There
Drive
was
faster,
the
please. The
Tuesday
baby
in
is so still.
January
I
when
am.
Chisholm
Just hold
was
the baby
5
tight.
and developed
can see
a
the lights.
fever
We're
that
almost there.
climbed so
We're here.
fast and
Stay
so
with me.
high it felt personal. Stephen carried her to the car wrapped in a blanket, her small body burning against his chest, her breathing shallow and wrong. Maya sat in the back seat holding her while Stephen drove to St. Nicholas Hospital at a speed that was technically illegal and emotionally necessary. He did not pray during the drive. He was too frightened for prayer. He just drove,
Okay, sweetie,
knuckles
let's lie
pale
down
on
for
the
the
wheel,
doctor now.
jaw set,
Okay.
making
That's it.
deal
Just
after
relax.
silent deal
You're
with
doing
whatever
great.
forces governed
listen
the
to your heart now.
survival of small
Okay.
children. Chisholm recovered in 3 days. Stephen did not sleep for 4. He attended every school event, not out of obligation, out of hunger. Parent-teacher
Chisholm is
conferences
an
where
exceptionally
Miss
brilliant
Adiola
child.
described
Her grasp of complex concepts and her eagerness to participate in class discussions are truly remarkable. She's a joy to teach.
Chisholm as bright, determined, a little stubborn, with a smile that told him the stubbornness was a compliment. Sports days where he stood on the sidelines in his work shirt, tie loosened, cheering louder than was strictly dignified for a man of his professional standing. The end-of-year concerts where Chisholm stood on stage in a paper
Today we discuss the
crown
role of technology in
and delivered her
education.
2
I
lines
believe
of the
technology is
Nativity
essential for
play
preparing us for
with
the future.
gravity
Let's embrace
of
it.
someone performing Shakespeare. He clapped until his palms ached, every single time. At the office, his colleagues knew him as Stephen the engineer, calm, methodical, reliable, the man who solved problems that made younger colleagues anxious. But on his desk, between the technical drawings and the project files, there was a photograph. Chisholm, at age 6, gap-toothed, school uniform slightly askew, grinning at the camera like she had just invented happiness. His manager had once pointed at it and said, "She has your eyes." Stephen had smiled and said thank you. He had believed it then. He had believed it completely, naturally, without a single shadow of doubt crossing his mind. Because why would it? The money stretched and stretched, and he stretched with it. A salary increase went straight into a savings account he labelled Chisholm University. He repaired the flat instead of moving to a bigger one because Chisholm's school was nearby and he refused to disrupt her routine. When the car broke down twice in 1 year, he took buses for 3 months without complaint. Standing in the early morning heat at bus stops in his ironed shirt, calculating in his head what the repairs would cost against what the school trip to Ibadan would cost, deciding in
This
favour
genetic
of
health
the
plan
school trip
sounds
every
serious.
time.
It is.
Then one
We're all
Monday
required to
morning,
complete
the
it.
company wellness program
Understood.
changed everything.
I'll get on it right away.
The memo called it Comprehensive a Full Medical Evaluation for all senior staff, including a genetic health panel to identify hereditary risk factors. Stephen signed the consent form by noon and thought nothing further of it. He arrived at Eco Medical Centre in Victoria Island, gave blood with the mild detachment of a man who does not fear needles, and was told results would return in 5 to 7 business days. He ate lunch at his desk. He attended a 3 o'clock meeting. The day was entirely unremarkable. On the 4th day, the clinic called and asked him to come in. He arrived at 2 o'clock in the grey shirt Chisholm had once told him made him look like a serious man. He was smiling at the memory when he sat down across from the doctor. The doctor placed a folder on the desk between them. He spoke carefully, in the measured tone of a man who has learned to modulate his voice when delivering information that will alter the architecture of a life. He explained the genetic panel. He explained the cross-referencing of family members listed on the form. He placed his glasses on. He turned the folder around. Near the bottom of the page, highlighted in yellow, were 2 words Stephen had never needed to know before that afternoon: paternity concordance, and beside them, a number, 0%. The doctor said the words carefully, like he was placing each one down on a
Here,
surface
have some
that
water.
might
I don't
crack.
want it. I'm angry,
He
not
explained
thirsty.
what
I
it
understand.
meant.
Please,
He
try to calm
explained it
down.
again,
Calm down. This is
differently.
ridiculous.
He asked Stephen if he would like
I
water.
can't believe this.
Stephen shook
This
his
is
head.
ridiculous.
He picked up the paper.
I'm outta
he
here.
Put it down. He picked it up again. He
Let's
walked
go.
out of the clinic at 2:20 into a Lagos afternoon that was full and loud and completely indifferent to what had just happened inside that room. He stood on the pavement for a long time. He did not go to his car. He stood there with the folder in his hand and 10 years of absolute certainty in the process of becoming something else. Something that had no name yet, but would require every reserve of strength he possessed before this was over. He read it again in the car. The same result every time, 0%. His mind ran through every alternative lab error, sample contamination, administrative mix-up, and dismantled each one with the same methodical precision he brought to engineering problems. Each possibility collapsed under its own improbability. When his legs gave way in the car park, in it was not metaphor. He slid slowly down the side of his car and sat on the hot tarmac in his grey shirt in Victoria Island on a Tuesday afternoon, holding evidence that the last 10 years had been built on something that was never what he believed it to be. Chisholm's face arrived in his mind with the force of something that refuses to be processed abstractly. Her hands pressed flat against his cheeks at age 3. "Daddy, wake up." Her voice from the back seat, "On her first day at Grace Fountain, I like it, Daddy. The grass is real." Her eyes in the hospital during the fever, finding his face first before anything else, because his face was the landmark that told her she was safe. He
Daddy,
called
what is
no one.
evaporation
He
again?
drove home at 6.
Evaporation is when
He
water
found
turns into
Chisholm at the
vapor and goes into the air. It's like when a puddle dries up in the sun.
Dining table, labeling clouds and rivers on a water cycle worksheet with a purple marker. She looked up and said, "Daddy, what is evaporation again?" He sat down. He explained evaporation. His voice did not shake. That night, after Chisholm slept and Maya's breathing settled into the deep, even rhythm of a woman without immediate guilt keeping her awake, Stephen lay in the dark and catalogued every overlooked detail: Mrs. Obiageli's measuring look, Maya's practiced laugh, the drawing with its strange proportions, the phone pressed flat against her chest. Every small and discarded moment was rearranging itself into a pattern so clear it was almost architectural. He lay there until the room began to lighten. He had not slept, but he had built something in his mind, not a plan yet, just a case. On the 4th morning, a Saturday, after Chisholm left for a birthday party 2 streets
This
away,
doesn't change anything.
Stephen sat at the dining table and placed the folder between himself and Maya. He said nothing, just placed it, and waited. Maya looked at the folder. She looked at his face first, measuring, calculating exactly how much was already known. Whatever she saw told her enough. She reached for the folder. She opened it. She read. The silence between them was not the silence of people with nothing to say. It was the silence of 2 people standing on opposite sides of a bridge that had just collapsed. She began to speak, and this was the detail that distinguished her confession from the kind that brings relief. She did not begin with apology. She began with explanation, with context, with the architecture of a woman who had rehearsed this moment and shaped it with his reception in mind. Stephen's jaw tightened, and because a version shaped for his reception meant the unshapened version was worse. The affair had begun in the 2nd year of their marriage, not at the end, not in a season of distance. In the 2nd year, when he had just been promoted, when they had just moved to Surulere, when he had believed with every cell in his body that his marriage was in its fullest bloom. A man from her former workplace, 7 months. Chisholm conceived somewhere in its heart. Then the detail that changed the texture of everything. He knows about Chisholm. The biological father had been told before she was born. He had known, and he had chosen, actively and without apparent difficulty, to let another man raise his child, carry her through fevers, pay a decade of school fees, and walked away without looking back. But the deepest cut came last. Maya spoke a name. His brother. Chidi, who had stood beside him at the wedding holding the rings, who had wept holding Chisholm the night she was born, who had called on her birthday every single year, had known for years. Had been told by Maya in a moment of guilt, and had chosen to protect the family's peace rather than his brother. Had looked Stephen in the eye at every Christmas, every gathering, every birthday, and said nothing. Stephen stood. He did not shout. He walked to the window and looked down at the ordinary Saturday street hawkers, children, motorbikes, and he breathed. When he turned around, his face held the composure that is more frightening than rage, the composure of a man who has shut every internal door. He picked up the folder. He walked to the bedroom. He closed the door quietly, and he sat in the Saturday morning light, utterly alone, inside a grief that had no name yet, because no one had been destroyed in quite this way. When Chisholm came home that afternoon, balloon in hand, chocolate at the corner of her mouth, she found him in the sitting room television off, room dim. She stopped in the doorway. Even at 10, a child can read a room, can read a father. She looked at him with the specific attentiveness of a child whose instincts are working faster than her language. He opened his arms. She crossed the room and climbed into them without hesitation, the way children climb into father's arms when they still believe the arms will always be there. She smelled of birthday cake and afternoon sun. He held her. He pressed his face into the top of her head. The innocent party in this entire story, absorbing the consequences of every choice she had never been consulted about. She had been brought into this world, placed in a home, given a name, given a father, given a decade of love, and was now, through no action of her own, at the centre of an implosion she had no instrument for understanding. He thought she did nothing wrong. The thought arrived not as consolation, as condemnation. He moved out on a Tuesday, the same kind of unremarkable Tuesday on which everything in this story had chosen to arrive. He timed it for Chisholm's school hours, so she would not watch him carry bags through the door.
Work clothes, documents, dad's watch, and the photo. That's everything.
In 90 minutes,
Chisholm won't see me
work
leave.
clothes,
That's what matters.
documents, his father's watch, the graduation
90
photograph
minutes.
that left a pale rectangle on the dresser where the sun had not reached. He did a final walk through the kitchen, the bathroom, to the living room with the terrible lamp he had threatened to replace for 3 years. He saved Chisholm's room for last. He stood in her doorway and looked at the corkboard, the family portrait in the centre himself, tall and slightly askew, holding her hand. His hand drawn disproportionately large. Large hands meant safety. She had always said his hands were her favourite thing about him. Because they're bigger than everything, she had told him once, so nothing can get past them. He touched the corner of the drawing. He did not unpin it. He stepped back, carried his suitcases to the car, and left. He left the drawings on the wall. The man's name was Kelvin. Stephen learned this from Chidi, who called 3 weeks after the separation, with more apology in a single hour than Stephen had received in a lifetime. And Kelvin had worked with Maya at the marketing firm. He was engaged to someone else at the time of the affair. He had known about Chisholm. He had made his choice quickly, without visible anguish, and moved on in the efficient manner of a man who had decided that consequences belonged to other people. When the DNA results surfaced, Maya contacted
Kelvin, it's me. I need to tell you something about the DNA test. Stephen and I, we had a
him.
confrontation. He's
She
gone.
told him everything, the
Okay,
test,
I'm
the
listening. Take your time.
confrontation, Stephen leaving. Kelvin listened, and then he spoke for approximately 9 minutes. He was married now, 2 children. The situation was complicated. He did not see what he could contribute. He was sorry for what she was going through. The call ended, 9 minutes, against 10 years. In the man for whom a marriage had been quietly dismantled, for whom a faithful man's world had been built on a lie, had given the situation 9 minutes of a Wednesday afternoon before concluding it was not his concern. He returned to his wife, his children, his life. The visitor had gone home, and what remained behind was not Stephen's destruction. It was his decision. He found an apartment in Gabagada, 2 bedrooms, close to Grace Fountain Academy, close enough for Saturday morning runs to the bakery on Adelaike Street that Chisholm had named the round bread place when she was 4. He furnished Chisholm's room first. He installed the corkboard last. He left space on it for new drawings. He went to her on a Saturday morning 6 weeks after he moved out. He bought the round bread, the chin-chin, the Ribena boxes she was not supposed to have before noon, and the specific yogurt flavour she had been requesting for 3 weeks before he left the one he had kept forgetting, and she had kept reminding him about with increasing exasperation. He bought the yogurt. He knocked on the door because it was no longer his door to open. Maya stepped back when she saw him. He said, "I'm here for Chisholm." She heard his voice before she saw him, and then she was in the corridor's Saturday pyjamas, hair loose, and she stopped and looked at him with everything a 10-year-old face can hold at once. Relief, hurt, joy. The specific joy of seeing a face you had been waiting for before you had fully allowed yourself to believe it would come. Then she crossed the corridor and hit him with the full force of herself. He held her, both arms, fully. He pressed his face into her hair, the same smell, unchanged, the exact same child she had always been, still his in every way that is not chromosomal and is therefore not less real, but possibly more. They sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours. He opened the Ribena before noon without comment. She told him about the drama project, the friend who
Shh, it's
stole
okay,
her
sweetie,
purple
I'm
marker,
here.
and the
I was
essay
so
Miss
scared,
Adiola
Daddy.
had assigned
I
about
know.
a person I admire.
Come on,
And
let's
she
get you
said it
something.
while looking directly
You're
at
welcome, my
him,
love.
leaving the attribution in the silence where he could find it. When he stood to leave, she followed him to the door. She looked up at him and asked the only question that mattered. "Are you coming back?" Stephen crouched to her level.
I
He
have
looked
to
at
go
her
now,
face, the
sweetie.
face that was
Daddy, are
entirely
you
its
coming
own,
back?
that he had been the
Of course,
first man
Pumpkin,
on
I
earth
promise.
to hold, and that
Okay,
he had
Daddy.
loved without condition for every day of 10 years. He said, "I'm not going anywhere, Chisholm. You hear me? I'm not going anywhere." She nodded slowly. The way children nod when they have decided to believe something, because the alternative is unbearable. He kissed her forehead. He walked to the
Bye-bye,
car.
sweetheart.
He sat inside
Bye,
it for
Daddy.
3 minutes before he started
love
the
you.
engine. He was not falling apart. He was decided. Chisholm's essay about a person she admired was about Stephen. Miss Adiola called him personally not to inform him, but to testify. She had read it at the parent session. Several parents had cried. The essay described a man who came to sports days in his work shirt with his tie loosened, who explained evaporation at the kitchen table, who bought round bread on Saturday mornings, who had hands bigger than everything, and so nothing could get past them. The essay did not use the word father once. It did not need to. Meanwhile, the community which had tracked this story with the focused attention of a people who understand drama as communal responsibility completed its verdict. Kelvin's 9-minute phone call had not stayed private. Maya's mother came from Newi and sat at that table in Surulere and said what needed to be said with the economy of a woman who does not waste words. "You had a good man. You chose a visitor. The visitor has gone home. Karma is not a thunderbolt. It is a ledger. And ledgers are settled with the same quiet precision with which they were constructed." Kelvin returned to his life, but he carried his account with him. The child he had walked away from without looking back. The 9 minutes he had rationed against a decade. A man does not escape that arithmetic simply by changing rooms. He carries it into every room he enters for the rest of his life. And in the small hours, when the house is quiet and no one is watching, the ledger always opens. Maya had chosen a visitor and watched him leave in 9 minutes. Chidi had chosen silence and lost his brother's trust in ways that no Sunday phone call would fully repair. And Stephen, the man they had all, in their different ways, underestimated, had chosen the only thing in the story that was never in doubt. He had chosen Chisholm, not because a document told him to, not because biology obligated him, but because 10 years of daily, invisible, unwitnessed choosing had made him something no test result could revoke. The DNA said 0. But the child in Gbagada was drawing his portrait for the second corkboard of her life. Purple marker, his hands disproportionately large, the essay already written, the verdict already rendered not by a laboratory, not by a court, but by a 10-year-old girl who had spent her entire life learning the precise definition of the word father, and had written it, without using the word once, in the face of the man who showed up on a Saturday morning with round bread and yogurt and both arms open. The DNA said 0, but she was drawing him, and nothing gets past those hands.